Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. This is Tanya Denova presenting a class assignment on technology and conservation. For my topic, I chose something very near and dear to my heart. It is my dream that one day I will be a beekeeper. I've always been amazed at the amount of work, organization, productivity, communication, and creativity of bees. I really think they're very intelligent animals. I think they're awesome and very interesting. And of course, our whole life depends on them. They're extremely significant for our prosperous and joyful life. So I'm really excited to share with you all the good stuff I learned so far, and I'm looking forward to inspire you to join me in making a difference. Very quickly, I will go over several points why pollinators are significant to us, what are the factors that are affecting their health and well-being, and I'll show you one tiny little fraction of technology that's proven to be successful in conservation and inspire you to make a difference. Here is for the purpose of this presentation, we're going to talk about bees in two different perspectives. We're going to look at the honeybee is managed colony bee, and then which is on your right side of the screen. And then in addition to that, when we talk of bees, we're also going to include all the native solitary bees, of which a representation on your left side of the screen is my favorite, the mason bee. So just want to set the record straight, and for your knowledge, to recap, honeybees are not native to North America. They're introduced to North America from the early European settlers. Honeybees are just like any other livestock. They're managed and well taken care of. They live in very large colonies. One hive could be up to 3,000 bees, as well as inside the hive there is a difference between the bees, right? There is the queen bee, there are the male drone bees, and there are the worker bees. Now, different to those guys, in the solitary bee's life, which is the mason bee, the leafcutter bee, the sweat bee, andrena bee, and a whole bunch of many more, in their life, there is no giant hives. There is no separation between the bees. You are what you are. So there's no queens and drones and workers. You're just one kind. And they are native to North America. Scientists say that there's somewhere between 3 or 4,000 different kinds of native bees here in North America. So how interesting is that? This picture is so freaking awesome, besides the fact that it's overwhelming in colors. But imagine not having all these juicy, succulent, fragrant, sweet, nutritious, full of minerals and vitamins, fleshy, I don't even know what else, amazing fruits and vegetables. They all are available to me and you. We are able to consume all of that, not just for our well-being, also with our eyes, as I am feasting right now. They're available to us just because of pollinators. See, to have any of these guys, we need there was a flower that needed to be pollinated to set out that fruit. In addition to consuming all these beautiful fruits and vegetables, we are also harvesting something else from honeybees, which is their honey, right? So yes, they're extremely vital to our survivalship, to our life, in terms of providing food for us. I don't know how many of you know, but there's a little tiny trivia. 1 out of 3 bites that you take in every meal is 100% related to the existence of a pollinator. So, if we don't have pollinators and all of that beautiful, colorful stuff is wiped clean from our table, the only thing will be left out of will be grains because they are pollinated by the wind differently than all these flowering uh, fruit and vegetable producing plants. Now, see, people and bees, we go back long times. There are some of the earliest records ever found were in the ancient Egyptians culture. There were hieroglyphs found in these pyramids that were dated back 4 to 5,000 years ago. And the ancient Egyptians, as you can see, have mastered the skill of having honeybees and collecting their honey. Now, it was later on the Romans who brought the honey to the old continent, and that's where Europeans kind of in the 16th, 17th, 18th century became very well skilled in beekeeping. And they are the one that brought beekeeping to North America. And beekeeping exists here the way we know it because of them. Now, pollinators are really in a pickle. They're really in a peril. And I know many of you have heard little snips and bits and pieces here and there on the news, from newspapers, from friends. You know, we're all out there buying organic and non GMO. We're trying to do our best to support our environment to a better future, right? Now, some of the factors that are contributing to the peril of pollinators are, of course, climate change, also urban sprawl, agricultural application of pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, that fancy, crazy, ugly disease, the colony collapse disorder, and of course, the increased demand for pollinators. These are all contributing to their stress, overwork, malnourishment, extinction, and peril. This is so disgusting, but I wanted you to say attributing to climate change. Now, climate change is responsible for much milder and shorter winters here in North America, of course, except this one, right? But because of that, many parasites are able to survive over the winter and thus being able to come back in much stronger numbers once the weather warms up in the spring. So bees, just like people, dogs, anybody you can imagine, are target to parasites. And these ugly, nasty, disgusting looking mites are affecting bees everywhere in North America and Europe, and they are sucking the life out of them, making them um, susceptible to diseases, unhappy, not as energetic, as healthy. So, due to climate change, that is one of the reasons why bees are dying in much larger numbers than prior. Another reason why climate change is contributing to the peril of pollinators is the fact of timing. Most of the plants nowadays are sprouting, showing up, and flowering much sooner than their normal average time window that they will do that. So, what happens is all these solitary migratory bees that are migrating from one place to another, whenever they arrive at a patch expecting to find a bountiful, plentiful field of wildflowers, they find flowers that are already done blooming and they see that there isn't enough food for them where they are, and that's making them flying further and further away and makes them much more exhausted in terms of finding food. which results in them being malnourished and dying much sooner than expected. There is no doubt that urban sprawl is absolutely 100% directly related to the peril of bees. I mean, what could be worse than this concrete jungle and being a bee in it? Imagine, I doesn't take a scientist. Just common sense tells me there isn't sufficient amount of flowering plants to provide food for the bees here, nor is there a sufficient amount for nesting habitat. So uh, I cannot stress much more than the obvious. Urban sprawl takes away natural habitat, not just from pollinators, but from all wild animals and plants. One of the major causes for um, the deaths and the peril of pollinators is our ginormous, binormous, quadrupormous, whatever you want to use, word of pesticides. See, with human population numbers constantly increasing, the demand of for food is increasing as well. But none of that demand is being met with the number of pollinators. And yet we are spraying and spraying and spraying more than ever before because we want farmers want to get the highest yield of crops that they can possibly achieve. Well, exposure to pesticides and herbicides and insecticides is harmful um, to bees, and it is detrimental to their life. Of course, USDA has a statistic that shows that in 1947 we've had 6 million of bee colonies, and in 2008 the number is down to 2004 to 2.4 million. Of course, this was 6 years ago, first of all, and second of all, look, it doesn't take a genius. These insects cannot cope with the amount of chemicals that we're putting out there, with the amount of buildings and highways that we are building every year, with the amount of parasites and viruses that are spreading amongst them day after day. So they are declining, not just in North America. Similar numbers are observed in Europe. And one day, it won't be just down half, it will be down to one third or down to a quarter and then down to zero. And then remember the picture of all these colorful fruits and vegetables? Well, that will only be a picture. So, this is what is happening. Agriculture and us are contributing to the peril of these tiny little insects at a very fast rate. Now, you know how they say busy as a bee? Well, they really mean it, busy as a bee. See, these guys, because these hives are portable and because there's such a very ginormous increased demand for crops to be pollinated, the bees are very quickly loaded on these tractor trailers and they're taken from point A to point B to point C to point D and so on over the alphabet and then again and again and again. And all year long, these guys are on the road, constantly loaded, unloaded, having to adjust to being in the humid conditions of Florida, then to the dry of California, and again to the wetness of the cranberry bogs of New Jersey or in Maine and New Hampshire. So if there's frequent flyer points for bees, these guys are getting all the comps and major awards, not me and you or any of us that are frequent flyers. So these guys are absolutely um, overworked. I have put together a few maps here to show you some routes of the bees, and imagine these industries, this agriculture, uh, all this money that's dollar signs that is associated with them. uh, that's what everybody cares about. Nobody cares about if that bee had a good sleep last night, or when are they going to take a sick day or a personal day, or do they ever fill out a request for vacation time? In this map, you can see much more intensive some of the points uh, of transportation. There's just one route over here: Louisiana, California, Louisiana again, New Jersey, New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, East Maine, Southeast Maine, Florida, New Jersey, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, back to Florida. So bees are definitely, I cannot stress how much they are being overworked and over transported to pollinate different kinds of crops for short periods of time uh, while they're in full bloom. There is another map that shows you what are the different crops and their distribution throughout the United States. And of course, a picture is worth 100 words. There is no need of interpretation. But these guys are working tirelessly around the clock for me and you. Now, what scientists are doing to help pinpoint an issue and to take conservation action is they're using this thing called harmonic radar. And I know you're hearing radar, and just like me, in your back of your head, you're thinking of speeding tickets and police cars hiding somewhere trying to get you. But this is different. This is what it looks like, a bee to be tagged with a radio transmitting device. They could be two different kinds. One is just a tiny little chip, as it is on the picture on the left, and the other one is an antenna simply attached to a diode that's attached to the back of the bee. Now, this technology is harmless to the bees. This is very, very light. The adhesive is non-toxic to the bees, and it falls off over time. So what happens is a bee's being put in a special chamber while it's in the beehive, and a scientist is able to put that tiny little chip on its back. And the chip constantly, when excited, transmits a frequency. And that frequency is later on picked by an antenna that sends the signal to a computer, and the computer can plot each time the signal has returned to the antenna on a spatial diagram, thus giving us a visual of where that bee is foraging and where it's going, where it's flying, what it is flying pattern and behavior out in the field. Now, knowing exactly where the bee goes and what its foraging behavior gives scientists the upper hand, because that way they can track and trace where the bee gets certain exposures, if it does, of course. Here you can see some of the equipment. It takes just a couple antennas and the transmitter on the back of the bee, a transceiver that's housed inside a little shed kind of a thing, and this is all portable. The technology is easily picked up and transferred to a different farm, different location, and set up to be utilized there. In this diagram, this is the first time German scientists showed and actually proved a direct correlation between exposure to pesticides and the dying off of bees. Uh, you can take your eyesight and just look at the right side of the screen. Find all the blue arrows. See, all the blue arrows and the gray arrows are showing all these bees that were able to return to their home. So what they did is they captured a lot of bees, and some they tagged all of them, but one third of them they exposed to pesticides, and the rest of them they released. So without being exposed to pesticides. So you can see all the bees that were released, the ones that were not treated with pesticides, were able to find their way back to their hive 100%. None of them got lost, none of them got strayed away. Um, but if you look at the red arrows, it shows you how many of the bees got lost. They could not find their way back to their hive. Only a few of them made it to some point towards the hive, right? Before they died. So there is a direct correlation between exposure to pesticides and bees being able to survive and find their way back to their hive. This is one of the contributing factors to CCD, or colony collapse disorder. Basically, colony collapse disorder is results in orphaning hives, and by that what I mean is the worker bees just don't return to the hive, leaving the hive empty with the queen and the larva be inside, um, on on the fate of their own survivalship. So this is a great example of how exposure to pesticides is greatly detrimental to the livelihood of those worker bees that are going out, pollinating, foraging, providing for us, and yet we're killing them. That's why farmers are instructed to spray and use chemicals if they will, and of course they all do, before the blooming of their particular crop. That way, uh, the exposure of the bees to those pesticides will be minimized, and yet there's scientific evidence that even at minimal exposure, those things are extremely harmful to the bee's health. So I know you're sitting at the edge of your seat right now, just like me, and you're saying, "Oh my God, I want to help, I want to help, I want to help. What can I do? What can I do?" And you know what? It's very simple, and many of those things me and you are already doing. Supporting your local farmers, supporting organic farming, and not just organic farming, but organic practicing of farming, and knowing where your produce comes from and how it's been treated, supporting local beekeepers, and um, you know just just doing your part that way is very significant. But if you want to go an extra mile and help a little bit more, I say build it and they will come, plant it and they will find it. So you can be proactive and find out. There's so many resources online on how to build a home for a native bee. You remember those solitary mason bee that we talked about at the very beginning? You can build nesting habitats for those, just like people build nesting birdhouses for birds. Imagine if you're in that concrete jungle and if you have a patio or a roof or a shed or maybe a little garden patch. Why don't you put out some of those native bee homes and they will come? Or if you have um, a little space, you can plant some native flowers. And believe it or not, the bees will find them and they will thank you for providing them with a little um, nutritious stopover at your patio habitat that you have created. Here are some examples of varieties. There's enormous, you can run your imagination wild of bee houses that you can build. And they mostly entail what I like to use is Phragmites or a bamboo, but it entails a little cavity. It has to be about 6 inches long and not very wide and not very narrow. But remember, bees have mouth parts. They can chew it wider or narrow as they need to. And it just has to be mounted, if possible, on your south or southeast side of your garden, your building, whatever you decide to do. These are a lot of fun to make with your kids. In fact, one weekend, if you have nothing to do, now it's the best time. Spring is the best time to get together and put some beautiful uh, native bee house in your yard. Other examples don't involve sticks or hay or straw inside, but simply is a block of wood and you just drill different sizes of holes in it and let it out for the bees to find it. One thing to remember, I just want to stress out, there's so many different ways that you can do this. And you could be a girl, you could be a kid. It doesn't take a genius to run a drill bit. So why not take your power tools and a block of wood and have a drilling party? Make some native bee homes and hang them out at your backyard. Take a picture and share with everybody using a hashtag #MyBeeHome, my world, so we can all see it. So here is what you can do if you have taken the extra steps to build a wildlife um, home for bees or plant your wildflowers for these bees and those pollinators to come by and utilize at your backyard or at your patio, your roof, your garden, whatever. Hey, take a picture, um, share it at a hashtag #MyBeeHome, share with the world, increase awareness, talk about it, and let's see how far we go. Let's see um how many people will get into this. And remember, it is my world, it is your world. I want to be a beekeeper. Many of you want to be beekeepers. I love my fruits and veggies. You love your fruits and veggies. They're good for you, they're healthy for you. Honey's good with tea, honey's good just with honey. These guys are working tirelessly for me and you, so why don't we just take 5 minutes of our time, put a bee house up, and let them use it and feel good about that. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you are now inspired and you're as bee wild as I am. Love you all.